Yeah, students, you once again welcome to section 2 of unit 4, which actually discusses the appraiser services. And to begin with, let's have a look at the objectives. And for the objectives, it simply says that by the end of this session, you will be able or expected to explain 1. Explain the appraiser services. 2. Outline the principles and functions of appraiser services. 3. Identify areas of data collection and appraiser methods. 4. Discuss the purpose, uses, types, and uses of tests. And 5. Identify the role of school guidance personnel in appraiser service. Now to appraiser service definition. Before that, let me indicate that appraiser is a form of assessment of worth of a person or a thing. Besides, it is also seen as an inventory service, which actually involves gathering, organizing, and interpreting information of data about a student for him to understand himself properly and the world. Now for Oledede, he actually sees it or describes it as a system which really involves gathering, organizing, and preparing information or data about people for the purpose of understanding himself. In fact, he actually goes ahead to indicate that when the student understands and knows his own strengths and weaknesses, he can make reasonable choices from different alternatives as his disposal. Now, the basic premise of indicating individual appraiser. This one we are talking about why individual appraiser. So the basis or the premises of individual appraiser is just that individuals are alike as well as different. Therefore, individual appraiser is done to highlight the individuality of each student. Besides all these, it is actually done to establish a distinctive picture of the individual by comparing himself or herself with others in terms of qualities of general human characteristics. Furthermore, it is actually done to indicate how one is similar to or different from others, and also to aid in students in understanding themselves and make meaningful decisions about their future career. And finally, it is done to aid school staff and parents to understand and help their students or wards as individuals. Now, the principles of appraisal. Let me actually indicate that according to Chahan, 2004, he actually emphasizes 5 specific principles that should be followed, actually the appraisal of students. These are 1. Collection of useful data. Only such data should be collected. This actually throws more light on the fact that it's very much valuable and suitable data for immediate use for a student's benefit. That is when we talk of usable or useful data. That's what actually it means. Then secondly, it also talks about collection or maybe made for planning such purposes that will improve school program, and collecting such data should be based on sound scientific principles. Now the next is retention of data. This one means that data should be recorded and retained for a longer period of time for later use. Such data will have a future use or benefit to the students. The next one that we can also consider is no violation of privacy. That is, in the process of collecting data, there shouldn't be anything of that sort. So here it goes to indicate that no datum will be requested or will be taken through invasion of one's privacy unless the purpose of the datum is made known to the students. Next of it is confidentiality. This one also explains that no other person than a member of a school may examine or be told of information from a student's cumulative record without any permission of the student or his or parents. The next is accuracy. Accuracy is also talking about the fact that data that are kept in students' cumulative records should be of standard value, should be accurate and current for use. They are, of course, supposed to be monitored and maintained by trained personnel and are systematically examined to ascertain that they accord with all principles. Now, functions of appraisal service. Student appraisal service are designed to gather and collect data about a student for the purpose of helping him or her carry out plans and improve in areas where he or she is deficit. Therefore, a good appraisal service should be integrated, should be continuous and utilitarian. Now, being integrated simply means that an appraisal service should include a variety of both tests and non-test information results of school-administered attitude and intelligence tests, anecdotal records, autobiographic and administrated data under the auspices of the counselor's office, interests, inventories, and occupational tests. The integration of all these different kinds of information enables the counselor to enjoy a wider and more accurate picture of the students for effective counseling. Now, being continuous also means that for the sake of its meaningful, the appraisal service must continue for a year to record students' progress in school, the changes observed by teachers, his or her relatives, heights and lows of performance and attitude are all should be considered. It should also begin from the basic level through the secondary level and consistently monitored and appropriately recorded so as to help the clients or to require interpretation at the time of need. Utilitarian. Being utilitarian also here talks about the fact that this is actually described as appraisal that can easily be translated into some measures of practical application. And the data collected about the student must be put to use to the benefits of the student concerned. Anything short of that really defeats the purpose of appraisal, especially where the data is collected and kept on shelves unattended to. Now, utilitarian. According to Akimpelu 2004, to make appraisal information utilitarian, the counselor must be guided by 6 principles. And these principles are: 1. The counselor must evaluate the information as a whole, never relying on a single piece of information. This actually means that any single piece of information matters in this exercise and must be well assessed in terms of all available information. Now, the second one also indicates that the counselor must apply interpretative skills in evaluating the information instead of simply accepting it at face value. This one also explains that in doing so, the counselor may apply psychological skills and insight in evaluating subjective information and statistical skills in evaluating objective test results. The third is that in sharing information with other members of the counseling team, the counselor takes full responsibility for making use of information. Now, in this sense, the counselor becomes a guardian of the student's information. The fourth also explains that, or indicates that the counselor attempts in his interaction with clients productively to integrate the information into interview. Here also indicates that the counselor may, for example, inform a student who is showing poor performance in school that he or she ability is measured by a test instrument far exceeds actual performance. The fifth one is the counselor actually looks at all information as it really reaches his or her office in order to act immediately when the information suggests that such action should be of benefit to the students. Here also explains that the counselor does not delay taking action on information that is brought before him after critically studying it, and especially where the information calls for urgent attention. Now, the sixth one, which is supposed to be the last one, indicates that the counselor contributes so much in functions as curriculum decision, hiring and promotions, dispositions of cases, of disciplinary committees, and the like, in recognize of the information in his or her files. This is to say that the counselor puts this information into practice in contributing to broad decisions that really affect our students. Areas of data collection. The appraisal service helps in the collection of personal data in the areas of interests and personality characteristics of the individual, in addition to his mental ability, achievements, and special attitude. Now, for the mental ability as one of the areas of data collection, it explains that the ability of the student to think in abstract terms or ideas with the aim of solving problems or learning. The next is said to be achievement. This one refers to achievements in education with special reference to what or how much a student or an individual has been able to attain from his classroom learning. The next is also says interests. Here also explains that interests may be the individual's feelings of like or dislike for an object or an activity. It can also be referred to as the person's level of curiosity or motivation in interacting with any object. The next is personality characteristics. These are all the affective traits of an individual. They actually include emotions, morality, attitudes, sociability, interests, and many others. Now, appraisal methods. Two basic methods are used in collecting data for appraisal service. And these are test and non-test techniques. For test techniques are made up of standardized and teacher-made tests. Standardized tests is a systematic sample of performance obtained under a given condition and scored according to definite rules capable of evaluation by reference to normative information. In brief, it is a test which has a uniform system of administration, scoring, interpretation, and reporting. Besides, standardized tests have a high level of objectivity. Being objectivity here really refers to the fact that the administration, scoring, and interpretation of the test do not depend on any examiner's individual judgments. They should be such that every examiner would actually use the same method to administer the tests, score, and interpret the scores to arrive at the same score and interpretation for one examiner or examinee. Yeah. Furthermore, for a test to be objective, its reliability, validity, and item difficulty, and determined through research before they are used widely. By the validity of a test, we mean to indicate that the ability of a standardized test to measure what is supposed to be measured. For reliability of a standardized test refers to the consistency of the test scores of a population of a similar characteristics over a period of time. All these or many others qualities of a standardized test, some of which are difficulty level, item analysis, and extent to which the items are able to discriminate between the performance or characteristics of students, etc. However, the most important qualities are its validity and reliability. Tests techniques continue. Now, teacher-made tests, on the other hand, is a test prepared by the teacher for intra-group comparison. For example, the class he or she teaches, whilst standardized, tests can be used for a similar population which may not be found in a single group. For example, the study habit survey can be used to determine and counsel students from different parts of the continent, age groups, class, and so forth and so on. Now, non-test techniques. Non-test techniques comprise a number of ways of collecting data. They are more qualitative based than quantitative. Now, the major methods used in collecting data include observation, interview, rating skills, anecdotal records, self-report forms, autobiographies, and social graphs. Now, data collected about the student is really kept in a document called People Cumulative Record Folder or People Inventory. And the information contained in these or includes personal data, family data, health record, situational profile, vocational interests, and other activities, school academic records, standardized test results, and school history. Now, purpose and use of tests. The first purpose that we can consider is prediction. This purpose is mostly used by counselors, especially in their dealing with the individuals. Here, the test scores are used to help students to predict how well they can actually perform or behave in future, as they offer a good basis for decision making. The next is selection. For selection, that is where test scores are really used by educational institutions, employment agencies, scholarship boards for selecting individuals for admission into higher educational institutions, job vacancies, and for awarding scholarships. The next is classification. This one also explains that for this one, the test scores are really used for classification purposes. In the process, individuals are divided into groups or classes according to types, not levels. For example, mental patients may be diagnosed and then grouped into different types. Junior high school students may also be classified according to their choice or their choice of senior high schools or types of course they want to pursue in future. Classification and placement are, of course, different entities together. For example, in classification, the test scores are used to group people into different types of jobs. But in placement, test scores are used to assign individuals into different level of jobs. The next one we can also have a look at is evaluation. For this, test scores are used to evaluate guidance programs, the effectiveness of counseling, or the classroom instruction, and so forth and so on. Now, types of tests. There are many ways of classifying tests, but we shall look at tests classified by purpose, and by doing so, 5 types of tests will be considered. And these are by Chester and Stone, 1976. For them, the first is mental ability tests, aptitude tests, achievement tests, vocational interest inventories, personality inventories. Now, mental ability tests. These are standardized psychological tests used to measure the mental functioning of individuals. Well, they are sometimes referred to as intelligence tests, scholastic aptitude tests, or cognitive ability tests. Various definitions have been therefore attempted on what these tests measure. For example, Terman, 1916, defined it as the ability to think in abstract terms. Wessler, 1914, also defined it as the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to think rationally and to deal effectively with his environment. Now for achievement tests. Achievement tests are used to measure the outcome of pupils or students learning in the classroom. They actually meant to inform the teacher or instructor on how much pupils, students, individuals have achieved from the classroom instructions. Aside that test may also be used for two purposes, namely prognosis and diagnosis purposes. In the prognosis purposes, it is used to predict how well an individual may benefit from a future training, and in diagnosis purpose, they are used to assess the difficulties and problems students do encounter in a previous course. Now, the aptitude tests. It also says that the type of tests that are used to assess knowledge, skill, and other characteristics that serve to predict learning success. In this way, they are therefore designed to estimate the future performance and success of a person in school, work, various occupations, and further education. The next is interest inventories, which are used to assess person's feelings of like or dislike towards an activity or an object. In particular, vocational interests inventories are designed to determine an individual's extent of liking or an occupation or an activity which is related to an occupation. For example, of a vocational interest inventories include occupational interests profile. We have also, that is OIP, we have also motivation for occupational preference skills, that is MOPS, and also we have attitude towards schooling inventory, and that's ATSI. Now types of tests continued, and we move to personality inventories. These are tools for measuring the personality characteristics of the individual, namely the affective or the non-intellectual traits of the individual. Some of these traits are emotions, motivation, extraversion, introversion, morality, sociability, etc. And an example of that is the Adolescent Social Skills Inventory, and that is ASSI. Aside that, Data collected by the use of personality inventories are used in the counseling of the individual's personal concerns. However, it is advised that only professionally trained individuals or counselors are to make use of these inventories because of their special nature. The next is types of non-test methods, and these include observation, interviews, questionnaires, and cumulative records. So to start with, and that is observation. In observation, we use our natural sense of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling to collect data from our environments. In counseling and other fields in the social sciences, we rely more on the visual, that is seeing, and auditory, that is hearing, sense to collect relevant information from our environment. Information is mainly and fundamentally about the behavior of a counselee, student, or an individual. Now, Schuster and Stone 1976 actually give forms or ways or forms to improve observation. And for them, the first is that before observation takes place, determine what is to be observed. Now, secondly, observe only one person at a time. And then thirdly, watch out for significant behavior. Four, better to have a number of brief periods of observation than one or a few long periods of observation. This actually becomes applicable especially in a classroom observation of students. Aside that, you must actually learn to avoid writing notes while observing. This is very significant in counseling. Remember also to write out the observation immediately after the observation exercise. Yes, another type of the method is interview. An interview is a method of obtaining information about or from individual, usually through oral interaction with the individual. The counselor uses this method differently from researchers or journalists. This is because counselors or researchers and journalists could not conduct an interview to collect facts, oftentimes on issues outside the person or the interviewee. Thus, the interview tends to be highly structured and is controlled very much by the interviewer. The facts or information obtained are used for research purposes or for the new media. But in the case of counseling interview, it is less structured and more flexible, and its aim is to seek information about a counselee so as to enable the counselor to help them or her resolve his personal problems. For effective interviewing, the counselor must be able to 1. Establish good rapport with the counselee at the beginning of the interview. This is a healthy relationship and is required before the start of the interview. Then the second is brief interviewee about the purpose and nature of the interview. And this one also explains that let the clients know the nature of the interview or the discussion. And the third is skillfully conduct the interview with appropriate, relevant questions and other responses. Fourth is close the interview such that the counselee will be more prepared to come again when called. This one, you can only do that by being very much thankful to the one or the interviewee. Types of non-test methods continue. Questionnaire. Questionnaire is an appraisal instrument in the written form comprising a number of items and administered to several people to collect data for survey or guidance purposes. In the school situation, a questionnaire may be used to collect data about students. Such questionnaire may be called the People Data Questionnaire and can be used to collect data on the student's home, family, health, study habits, and activities in and out of school. Cumulative records. The cumulative record is a means of storing information on students longitudinally. Usually, the data found in the cumulative records includes 1. The personal and family background information of the students. 2. The health of the students. 3. Achievement results of the students from terminal examination, continuous assessment, etc. 4. Results from psychological tests taken by the students. And then, of course, you may have aptitude, interest, personality tests, and so forth and so on. Now we have hobbies of the students. The school clubs, he is actually a member. Anecdotal reports from teachers, headmaster, or mistresses. The last one, which is date of admission into the school. So cumulative records are found in the form of a folder or a card. The data in the cumulative record can be used by teachers for understanding students with regard to their performance in subject areas and rendering help to them if they need such help. And that is the remedial use of the documents. The data in the cumulative record can be used by the school staff. To bracket, that is the counselor and then teachers for case conferences on students who require special help. Now, counselors can use cumulative records for counseling purposes. Headmasters, headmistresses, housemasters, housemistresses can also use the data from the cumulative record to write testimonials on students. Now, since the cumulative record is available for use not only by the counselor but by other staff members also, any intimate or sensitive information of a student which is considered confidential should not be recorded in it. Such information should be in the counselor's confidential file. Uses of tests. A number of individuals make use of tests, such as teachers, counselors, and administrators. Only counselors' use of tests will be discussed as far as this program is concerned. Now, counselors' use of tests from Schertzer and Stone 1976 and Traxler and North 1966. Tests can be used in counseling. So, to obtain accurate and reliable information about such students or individuals' abilities, attitudes, interests, and personality traits, this really helps individuals or students to have self-understanding. The next is 2. To help predict future performance of students. Thus counsel them on which subjects or courses to pursue. 3. To help students and their parents make useful decisions with regard to planning their future careers. 4. To diagnose individuals or students' academic, social, and emotional problems and provide appropriate treatments to solve the problem. 5. To help counselors evaluate the objectives of their guidance program. And then 6. To provide data for testimonials to higher institutions, employers, on students, etc. Now, the role of the guidance personnel in appraisal service is to ensure that 1. The available data are adequate for self-evaluation. 2. The individual students understands the information. And then 3. The individual or student is able to interpret the information with respect to the realities of the external world. Thank you.